the next panelist, it's an amazing group. It's working with philanthropy, social entrepreneur. We have Pamela Hawley. I've known Pamela for years. Her father was a mentor to me, and one amazing individual. And Pamela came on my podcast years ago, and she told the story about how in her life she wanted to just follow a life of service. And she did by starting up an organization called UniversalGiving, which you'll hear more from. Mark Lutz, Mark and I, we haven't met, but we will meet. Coming to this conference is our first opportunity. And he joined the Opportunity International in 1986 as a key member of the private fundraising team, where he has grown private annual revenue from $1 million to more than $40 million. And then the third panelist is Zoe Ryan. Zoe flew in from Kenya for this conference, and she is the founder of the ZAR Agency, a social entrepreneur and a global citizen who has spent the majority of the last 25 years living and working in 7 different countries and 6 different continents. And Zoe and I go back a few years learning how to fish together. Every summer we go to a summit up in just over the border of Wyoming and learn how to entertain trout with our fly fishing. So with that, why don't we invite Pamela, Mark, and Zoe up, and Eric is going to moderate. Eric Olson will moderate the session here.
Each of you have very beautiful backgrounds, very varying backgrounds. We're going to tie back in a little bit about what each of you have done with the questions, because we don't have time for each to also introduce today. But let's start with the core of why we put this panel together today. And would love to hear from each of you. Why is it pivotal that when philanthropists work on projects that they work with local leaders? Why is that important?
I'm actually not the best person to talk with, because I really don't work with, sometimes I work in liaison with local leaders, but usually it's individuals. And I do what I call long-term patient investment in human capital. And I really am super behind the scenes, but I help people figure out critical thinking, how to ask questions, how to plan, and then I let them go talk to the local community people, and then they come back to me and we revise and go back. So I don't interact directly.
Let's go to Mark then.
So I'd say a couple of reasons. One is it's the best way to be sustainable. So that when the foreign leaders and the foreign funds leave, whatever we're doing there carries on. I think the other is that it's scalable. The affordability of local staff is a fraction of what one can import someone to do. There are plenty of capable people wherever we're working, and so we want to empower these people because they can take on the work. Let me just give an example. We among other things, we make loans to farmers in very rural communities dotted across Africa, where most of the 700 million extremely poor people are living on farms. So we make loans to these farmers, but we don't do it directly. We do it through the local people. We have an executive director who oversees all of Africa. That every country then has a director. That's all local people, wherever that country is. And then they hire the local loan officers and trainers who give out the loans and provide the services. But there's another level even to that. And that is that what we find is that the farmers are best served when they're working with what we call a farmer support agent, who's one of their fellow farmers, who's also working in the fields. And we give them a stipend, train them a little bit. We give them a pad. Electronically, they're out in the fields every day with their fellow farmers. And so if a farmer has a question about their crop, the farmer support agency can help them get through what is causing that leaf to wilt, and what is the best antidote you can do, and where can you buy it. And that's all done right in the field by the local people. So working through the local people rather than us coming in and trying to do it ourselves is far more sustainable.
First of all, I would just say that, Zoe, you are doing an amazing job, because you're that behind the scenes, imparting that information to those local leaders so they can impart it in their own way, their own culture. I still view you as locally having that impact and supporting people that way. Universal Giving is a Web2 platform. We help people donate and volunteer in 100 countries across the world. We have 98% of our staff is on the ground. We work with people in Pakistan, Switzerland, India, Philippines, and it's amazing the different work ethics and culture that you can get by these people helping you run your organization and choose the nonprofits that we work with. So, for example, if you look at Amazon, you can buy blenders, potato chips for us. You look at Universal Giving, you'll see ways to volunteer and ways to give. And we vet all of those nonprofits with a 24-stage quality model, vet finance, terrorism, all of that. But having local people on the ground who can visit that nonprofit, who has a dialogue with them. We have found that some nonprofits, they must have relationships with the tribal people. They must have relationships with the governments in order to be effective. We wouldn't see that in the United States, maybe to be a part where you've got to have that endorsement of a tribal leader. So you have to really, really listen. And I think the fact of being a greatest philanthropist possible is to be a great listener in everything that we do. You've got to listen. I'll give one more quick example. I've volunteered all over: earthquake crisis in El Salvador, domestic violence in Mexico, Amazon preservation in Ecuador, the victims of Pol Pot's regime in Cambodia. And in Guatemala, we did sustainable farming, and I will never forget this. I was volunteering with Italian and French, all coming in from outside. Got to be really careful. Got to be a great listener. This is not your country. And what is the efficiency of the American people? You're planting corn on the steep hillside, and the Americans were outraged. You're wasting corn. You're putting 5 kernels in the land. And the Guatemalans were like, no. One is to bless the marketplace. One is to bless the local farmers. One is to bless our families. One is to say thank you to God. And one is to bless the land. If you take any one of those kernels out, you will fail. We will not do it. So you have to listen. There's so many of those stories. Every time I come into a country, I'm taking 50 steps back going, what do I need to learn? Because the American efficiency in me, and I'm from Silicon Valley, and we're going to get things done. Whew. Take a step back and make sure that they're getting it done and you're providing what you can do to help them. But this is not your country. This is not your way. We're extremely productive and efficient here. Not bad, but may not be their way. And they might have a better long-term sustainable way. It takes a little bit longer, but not really, because you're enfranchising the whole community there. It's not possible to do it and just come in and supplant your American values. We have to take a step back and listen.
I love that, Pamela. That was actually going to be my next follow-on question, which is, what is the most important skill that people can use when working across different cultures?
So very interesting, because before I came here, I sat down and I talked to people, Kenyans, Indian Kenyans and Black Kenyans, and I said, I'm going on this panel and I want to hear what you have to say and I want to carry that message forward. The number one thing they told me was nobody listens to us. People need to listen. And so I just want to give a couple, there's like 4 points that I wanted to make, which I'll read through them quickly. One person told me what we can do differently. Presumption that without formal knowledge, change cannot occur. There needs to be more respect for the quote unquote, not book knowledge, not school knowledge, but the indigenous knowledge that people have. Rethinking the theory around investment so that it rewards locally led efforts. Define what success at the community level is. I am because we are. And then the final thing is a commitment to funding for multiple years and asking each project in each community what they need. And so it's just interesting to me that all of these years into philanthropy and aid and stuff like that, and people still don't feel listened, heard, and their voices respected.
What's the solution to that?
You want to hear?
Yeah.
I have an idea after talking to people, and it was interesting because I proposed this to the people that I was talking to, but I'd love to create a listening tour and take people and actually have them listen, not ask questions, but listen to local community leaders and their needs. And it sounds like, I don't know where my friend Tao is, but we were having a discussion yesterday, and she said, she's from the Gates Foundation. She said, but we listen. And I said, there's got to be a disconnect, because how is it that every person that I spoke to before I came here said they felt unheard? So what I would love to be able to do is get people together in this room, get people together in Kenya and beyond, and figure out how they can be heard.
I love it. That's great. So I'm going to hold that next question actually for a little bit later. But can you guys share examples of cultural missteps that have happened within your organizations or others that you've been aware of, and how it could have been prevented? And everybody here has projects that they're working on. Everybody has ways that they're collaborating that sometimes are within our own borders as the U.S. Many of them are going across borders. And so that's really where we're looking for. How can we avoid cultural missteps as philanthropists and as people are working on various projects? Have Mark start.
I think one of the missteps that we made was the feeling that the golden rule, he who has the gold rules. And the funds were being raised in the United States and then implemented throughout the developing world. We then had 5 other Western countries raising funds, going out to 30 different countries in the developing world. And the people who were really doing the work had very little voice at the table of what decisions were being made. They made the local decisions as to what interest they're going to charge on the loans and who's going to get the loans and things of that nature. But the basic governance issues were made by Westerners. And so we had to learn that very embarrassing lesson and recognize that we needed to create a board that consisted of the leaders of both the support partners and the implementing partners, who together would then make the decisions.
We've had some very interesting situations because of our vetting model that's 24 stages. We're vetting across finance, terrorism, mission, Me Too movement, all across the board. We started off with 6 stages and now we're at 24. We just don't stop innovating on that. So we're doing that for Universal Giving's website, but we're also doing it for companies and their corporate foundations and high net worth donors, family foundations, and family offices, so that people know and can trust their money is going to the right place. I will tell you, I was on the ground in Ecuador, and we were working with a nonprofit that was a tribe that was working to help purify the waters in the Amazon around there. Lovely people. And we went in to meet with the tribe leader. And one of the things that I've taught myself to do is to be very observant, physically watching someone's shoulders, looking at eye content. I talk about like what's in their eyes, what's the feeling you get in your heart. All of that, when you're meeting someone, I'm listening to their soul, to their mind, not just at all what they're saying with their words. We all know when you say, I love you, you can say it like that. You can say, I love you. It's not the same thing, right? So the words are less important to me. I felt in this kind of cave that something wasn't right. So I just lingered a little bit longer. Still nothing came up, but I kept staying there, and I just knew it. I'm going to listen to my SGI, my spiritual gut instinct. I'm just going to keep listening here. And eventually I asked if I could see the office of the tribal leader, because they had an office in this kind of clay, home. And I went back to the office, and there was a desk there. And I'm not sure if I'm saying the right magazine, but I don't know if it's a man, if it's Playgirl, Playboy, I don't know. But there were all these photos up, 30 photos of Playgirl, Playboy, whatever it was, all up all over the office. We're done. We're not funding that nonprofit. I just gently walked out. And so you see a lot of missteps from the nonprofits as well, that if you're not discerning, if you're not patient, if you're not taking your time, you're also seeing nonprofit partners that can not be upright. And you really have to dig in a very, very, very kind way. Listen to your instinct. It's not all on paper. You really have to listen to who those people are and listen and see what's really going on. This is where you've got to slow down to speed up. Sure, we could have vetted it. Things look great. The Amazon forest looks great, the patch they're working on. A lot of times I think in life in general, we have to slow down, really make sure we're doing the right thing, and that will help accelerate your results in the long term.
Wonderful. Okay, I want to take us in a little bit of a different angle, and I'm going to start off this with Mark, and then Zoe and Pamela jump in. Many people here are highly involved in the tech world and technology. Wanted to know, how is AI and technology impacting the work that you're doing right now?
Want me to start?
Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier this, in the field, the farmer agent can look into a tablet and get an answer to help the farmer. What we're doing today is through the use of artificial intelligence, we've created an application for farmers in Malawi. That's our pilot. It's been going on for about a year now. So all the farmers in Malawi who have access to a phone, and most of them do, they have an app that operates in their own language, their own dialect. They simply speak into that phone and say, okay, here's a picture of my crop that's failing. What's the problem and how do I fix it? Within nanoseconds, what used to take her a week to get into the city, to finally find somebody there that could hear her problem and then wait for the answer to finally come back, her crops are withered. But now within nanoseconds, it tells her in her own language, because she can't read, this is what you need to do. This is the antidote. This is the cause. And this is where you can go to get the cheapest price for that product. And that's what we're doing with artificial intelligence in Malawi right now. We plan to go throughout our footprint in Africa. We've started a collab. I don't want to get into too much detail, but once a year now, we're bringing together 200 or so people from around the world for a day of ideas. Last year, we came up with over 200 ideas. Those 200 best ideas were distilled down to 20. Those 20 they got a consultant that helped them, a coach. And then finally, we came down with the final 6, and we had a session in Silicon Valley. And we had panelists there who listened to these ideas, came up with the best 3, and we've agreed to fund them. And these 3 ideas, these are not ideas coming from Americans. These are coming from people not only with boots on the ground, but mud in their boots. These are people writing the ground to the people every day who are coming up with these ideas and saying, this is how AI could help us if you could just pull it off. And so the very next one that we've agreed to fund is for school teachers who they're working in private, we call them private not-for-profit schools, but they're very inexpensive, $2 tuition to get in. But these are for kids who the formal education has just, not working at all. Teachers don't even show up. And so we provide these teachers that are working in these private schools with lesson plans. So the teacher who's never before had a lesson plan, she now has this not only for each of the grades, but for each of the levels of accomplishment within each grade, so that she can have this lesson plan developed for her. And that's all done through artificial intelligence.
That's incredible.
I see a drawback that I've seen in working in Kenya with AI is that the local people who work need to do a proposal. And I've seen the quality of the proposals or ideas go up. But then when I actually have a conversation, there's a disconnect because AI is telling them to do this. So AI is beneficial, I can see, in many areas, but in that particular area, it hides and it can actually hamper you if you don't really have those conversations. And again, going back to the very tough work is you really got to meet people where they're at and take them where they want to go, work with them, hold their hands. And if they're able to hide behind AI and think that it gives you the impression that they know more than they do, it's actually hurting more than helping.
I think for us, AI provides an incredible amount of initial due diligence. It can provide you a lot of background that you might not have found quite as quickly by using AI. However, first of all, I love technology. I'm from Silicon Valley. I love it. I embrace it. I study it. As with most types of great technology, you still need human curation, human intelligence, and human judgment call, and a human heart. And when you have that, that balances out that information that you've been provided. We can't just devolve all of our NGO vetting to AI. It won't work, but it can accelerate the informational process. The other thing I would just encourage people to think about is, where are we getting the images, the information into AI? Are you really getting into those tribes that are 4 hours outside of Bangalore? I worked with Opportunity International. I was on the ground with them working in microfinance. You had to take a car and then a cart and then horses to get to the place 4 hours outside of Bangalore. Is AI getting all those images right now about how that particular tribe is operating? I would just say we need to continue to build it, use it absolutely, but temper it with human heart and human judgment call.
I love it. That's wonderful. Okay. One last question. 2-sentence answers for each, and then I want to get a couple questions from the audience. And it's how do you reconcile local needs with with your organization's mission? Because what you may be setting out to do may be different than what they actually need on the ground before you get there and listen. So how do you reconcile that? We're going to start Pamela, and then we're going to go over to Zoe. 3 sentences.
Try not to do it. Try not to come in with your own view. Start with a listening tour, just like what she was saying. I don't see any benefit to coming in with what you think is the best thing to do. You have no idea what's going on the ground there until you really get there and listen to people.
I assume that they all have something to bring to the table. What is that they have to offer? And they may be so poor that they don't even think they have anything, but they have a great deal. Once they've identified what they have, then capitalize on it and leverage it, because they will help to create the solution that will meet their needs, not ours.
And I'll just piggyback on that. The people that I work with have their own solutions. They know what they need. They know what they may not know how to do it, but if you meet them where they're at, listen to them and help them go where they need to go or want to go.
Wonderful. I love that you all were under 3 sentences. Okay, want to open it up for the audience. Indrani.
When speaking about AI, what about the discrepancy between those who have access to these kinds of technologies and those who don't? Other ways that you're working to help provide?
Yeah, for those who didn't hear it, how do you deal with the discrepancy between those who have access to artificial intelligence and those who do not, right? So that's precisely why we're challenged. This is our newest frontier. I wish I had another 35-year career with Opportunity International, because this is the most exciting time to get in and figure out, how do you make artificial intelligence available to the poorest people at a fraction of the cost, better services, reaching more people in the most unreachable places. And you can do that through artificial intelligence. And what we do, like I was describing with the ag program, all the data that's in that program for Malawi comes from the Department of Agriculture for Malawi. So it's not going to help a farmer in Iowa. It's only going to help the farmers in that country. So we've got to bring artificial intelligence and make it useful for the local people.
Good. Do we have another question? Okay, we're going to go to a bonus question. All 3 of you have been in this game for a long time. Not super long, but long. How is the international development community, how is all of this philanthropists working together, how has it changed since you first started working in it? Okay. Everyone's pointing to Mark, so Mark, you get it.
So Opportunity International started 50 years ago making individual loans, one-on-one. Within 10 years, we had followed Dr. Muhammad Yunus's method of only making loans to groups, primarily of women. Our $1,000 loans came down to $100. Our male-dominated loans came down to women. groups of 20 women would co-sign for each other. That was their only collateral. That was a major breakthrough in terms of... The next thing we learned was that the poor absolutely need a safe place to save their money. It's not enough to give them loans. Nobody was giving money. So we had $125 million campaign, and we raised this money and opened up a chain of banks across sub-Saharan Africa. The commercial banks saw the success of this. They came into the market. Capitalization requirements escalated, so did regulations. So we sold most of our banks. And then we went into two frontiers that very few people in NGOs had gone. One was for farmers, and the other is for people who are starting little schools in very poor communities for the members of their communities that had been failed by the government schools. And so we had to make, and nobody was lending money to these. But because the commercial markets saw the success of it, our job was then to convince the commercial markets to come in and lend out. In the last few years, we have loaned out about $2 billion per year into schools, farmers, and micro-entrepreneurs. It's not our capital anymore. It's the capital of the local banks. But if they work with us, we provide the wraparound services, they'll get their money back, and they're happy. And that's how the thing goes. So that's how it's growing.
For us, it's very different. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
For us, it's very different. When I started Universal Giving, I started it about 11 days before 9/11. Do you think anyone wanted to give internationally after that? That was 2 years of absolute perseverance where people we all just hunkered in on the United States. It was a great lesson for me as an entrepreneur to continue to build and to make Universal Giving excel. From that, we've seen so much happen of embracing of international development, people caring. One of my greatest trends that I love, two of them, is that youth are volunteering when they're 14, or they're saying, I want to go on my spring break and go volunteer abroad, and using our site to do that. Women who are retired having a second career volunteering when they're 60 or 65. Families taking a family vacation, going 4 days vacationing, 1 day volunteering. The trends on volunteering are off the charts. We love it because when you give back of your time, your mind is changed, your voting changes, your compassion goes through the roof. It's so exciting. You understand someone else's situation. You're seeing it visually, you're feeling it, you're having conversations. So the trends in volunteering and how that's gone from families, retirees, and youth volunteering, we could not be more thrilled with. Now, if you look at most resumes of someone 18 or 19, it's almost peer pressure. Where's your international volunteer trip? Where did you give back? I didn't have that. In high school, for me, I was labeled a geek. People said to me, what are you doing? Like, you're not going to really be able to make a difference. And so that has just been changed in the most marvelous way possible. It's part of our life now here.
And I would just like to talk about the power of one. While capital is very important, living in Kenya, and I work in an area called Kibera, and if money was going to change, Kibera would be this shiny, sparkly, it's the largest slum in Africa. It would be just this incredible place, and billions of dollars have been poured into it. So I think it's part of the solution, but I think, for my work, it's so granular, it's so micro, and it's working with people. I call it long-term patient investment in human capital. And I have this theory, if one person helped one other person, the whole world would be helped. And this is not about financing. It's like me be able to come to you and how are you doing and what are you struggling with and how can I help you, and be a sounding board and be a connector. And that is so powerful. And so if everybody could just look for one other person and help that person, I think the world would be not a happier place, but a better place. So
I love it. And with that, we are right on time. And so thank you very much, Pamela, Mark, Zoe. And if you guys want to talk with them, catch them at the next break.
I actually have one more thing I'd just like to say very briefly is that there's a lot of focus on international development, but also we need things in our own backyard, giving back to, our own communities. But also, what about if you need it in your own home? I moved back in to help take care of my parents for 4 years. Sometimes it's abroad, sometimes it's your backyard, sometimes it's in your home. So I encourage us to make sure we're taking care of our families as well. It was a big honor for me to do so.